Shall we start? Okay, thank you all for coming. I'm sorry that I cannot deliver this talk in German. I'm a long way from that. I'm taking lessons, but I'm a long way from doing that. Today I will talk about the research that we do, some of the research that I do here at the Institute, but I will try to convey most of the talk using the medium of cartoons. And I'll talk a little bit about where this comes from. So my name is Iyad Rahwan. I run the Center for Humans and Machines here. So I employ a group of computer scientists and social scientists and psychologists and economists, so people from different disciplines, and we're interested in the impact of artificial intelligence and digitization on society. So first, let me tell you a little bit about the background story of the cartoon. So in addition to being a scientist, I also like drawing and sketching and painting. And this is a sketch I did when we first moved to the Institute. This is me and my wife and my daughter on my shoulder. And my wife was pregnant with our second daughter. This was late 2019, very early in our visit here, in our move to Germany. And then the pandemic hit. And I was always interested in the New Yorker magazine because I really love this cartoon medium, it's a very typical, this is one of the most famous one. It was like one of the early memes about the internet. And basically, this format is very interesting because it's not like a comic strip. It's like a single picture, a single image, and one punchline. So the picture has to set up the joke, and then the punchline is just the one line, right? You don't get to kind of build up. But it's a very constraining format, and I like it because then everything has to be told in the picture to be set up, and then the punchline delivers the message. So my interest in sketching, my love for New Yorker cartoons and the pandemic result in this project, right? Being stuck at home, not just with the pandemic, but also with two small kids, means that you need a hobby that you can interrupt very easily and very quickly. So I launched the website on social media as well, so you can register there and get the updates. And at some point, I will run out of ideas, but for now, I'm releasing them once a week. And I will try to deliver this talk using this medium. So, and I will use this character, the self-driving car, as one of the ways in which we explain a lot of interesting ethical challenges that technology brings about. So I thought first I'd start by explaining, when we say people are afraid or worried about artificial intelligence, what do we mean? People are afraid of different things. So let me talk first about the threats of evil AI. There's all sorts of things. There's, the Terminator, of course, situation, the existential risk that AI will take over the world and will dominate us. And it turns out that this can happen even if the AI is very nice. So if we program the AI to eliminate misery, maybe it will calculate that the best way to do this is to eliminate humanity because we're just miserable by nature, right? People are also worried about the threat to peace. So there's a big concern about autonomous weapons. So when you have a robot army, you don't have to motivate people. You don't have to convince them to go to war. You just press the button, right? And I don't know if you got, but like this Wallace here is a reference to Braveheart. Then there is the threat to livelihood. So people are concerned about jobs being taken by robots and machines. And then we're all lining up for unemployment benefits with the robots. And of course, the robots are replacing each other now. This is getting even more complicated. Then there's the threat to institutions. So there's big concern about what happens when the president of the United States is not just, when they install a new Supreme Court justice, which is a very timely topic, they can maybe upgrade the existing one instead. And there's actually, this is real, the introduction of robots or machines, algorithms in judicial decision-making is already taking place. There are already, in the US, algorithms that advise judges on whether to grant bail to people and even how much to sentence, how many months to sentence or how many years to sentence people. And in principle, this is not bad. Like if it does a better job, maybe it's more objective than human judge who, there's a study, very famous study from Israel that says, judges give worse sentences if it's just before lunch than after lunch. So, humans are not perfect either, right? So we have to be careful. But this is a concern. And then, of course, there's the threat to human relationships. So you can imagine taking, your romantic partner out for dinner, but then there's Alexa here. And you say, look, I'm not in love with Alexa. I just prefer to upload my concerns to the cloud, right? And this is a problem because if the AIs are becoming really good at talking to us and we feel more comfortable confiding in them, we may be less likely to confide in humans, right? So there's kind of a spillover effect, potentially, to humans. And of course, Alexa is just a box, so imagine if Alexa is like a very nice-looking robot, right? That looks like a human. And then maybe the most concerning is threat to human development. So imagine a situation, and this is from social media, this was the cartoon that generates the most kind of shock. You can see the kids are playing outside, and then this robot toy is saying, please stay, I get lonely when you go outside, let's sing some advertising jingles, right? So there's potential, if left unregulated, right? These robots will learn, may learn behaviors that may stifle the development and the socialization of children, for example. They may also introduce them to products and so on in ways that we find unacceptable. They already do this with adults, right? So these are a variety of concerns, and this is just to give you a sense of like how varied the challenge is. Now let's talk a little bit about, okay, what causes evil AI? What are the causes of the problems? And I can't obviously give you an exhaustive list here, but I'll give you a few examples, some of which are inspired by my own research and the research of my team here. And one is trust miscalibration. So what does this mean? It means sometimes we can maybe trust the machine too much. Okay, so you can see a robot here. This is the White House. The robot's carrying some TNT, and you say, oh, this little guy is so cute. Of course, he can take a selfie with the president. Now, it looks like a joke, but except that it was done as a study. So not exactly with explosives, but there was a group of researchers from Harvard University and Brown University had a robot try to get access to infiltrate a secure student building, which requires a card. And it was surprising how many people let it in without asking any questions. So this is like a serious threat. So they're over-trusting the machine for some reason in a situation where they maybe wouldn't trust a human. But there's also the flip side to this is that we might trust humans too much. We will not trust ourselves too much. So this is based on a study that we did. So imagine it's 2045. There are self-driving cars, and they are safer than 99% of drivers. But nobody wants to buy them because everybody thinks, I'm in the 1% of the best drivers. And of course, and this is a well-documented effect in psychology that we have, this is called illusory superiority, that we feel we are better than average in all things, right? Or at least on average, there are people who always underestimate their skills, but on average, most people overestimate their skills. So another cause of evil AI is not trust misallocation, but blame misallocation, right? So in this case, we blame the wrong party. So one problem could be to blame machines for human mistakes, right? So a judge sends somebody to jail, and this person is innocent, and says, the machine told me to do it, right? Or, the robot vacuum cleaner ate my homework, right? The flip side of this is that we blame humans for machine errors, right? So somebody misprogrammed the machine, but we blame the human. Imagine there is a kind of road rage, you have an accident with a self-driving car, and then you feel like, okay, I need to punch someone, right? Like, I'm angry, my car is damaged, so I can't punch the car, right? I need a human. And actually, we did a study that gives exactly this result. You have an semi-autonomous vehicle in which there is a human driver, but also an semi-autonomous driving system. And when both make mistakes, people over-blame the human. So they search for the human, and they blame the human. Okay, Another cause is ethical dilemmas. And let's talk about ethical dilemmas a little bit. This is the autonomous car is the kind of perfect example for this. And my own research has made a lot of use of this because it's so easy to understand. So imagine a situation. We have an autonomous car here. The car is about to kill 5 pedestrians crossing the street. It will run them over. But there is one other option, which is the car can swerve and kill this one other person. And the reason it's called a dilemma, right? So these are the two options. Do nothing and kill 5, or swerve and kill 1. And in a dilemma, there is no right answer. Of course, there is a wrong answer, which is you kill the 5 and then you turn around and you kill the 1, the 6. But there is no right answer, right? So what do philosophers say? So philosophers say, there are two classes of philosopher, broadly speaking. One is utilitarian philosophers, exemplified by Jeremy Bentham, who's kind of the father of utilitarian philosophy, who would say the car must swerve to save more lives. So what matters is the outcome. So if the outcome is better, that's what you should do. Immanuel Kant, very popular in Germany. No, the car should never swerve to kill somebody, right? Should never intentionally kill a person, or even as a side effect, right, of saving the 5. And there's a tension between these two considerations. You can see that they kind of both make sense, right? And people prefer one or the other depending on all kinds of contexts. Now, of course, I always get this. Can't the car just brake and save everyone, right? Like they haven't thought about it, Of course, this is a thought experiment, which means that you suspend this belief, right? Like you say, okay, I know that there are other solutions potentially to this problem, but let's assume that there are no solutions because we want to force people to really consider the conflict between the two values, right? So of course we should think about other options, maybe outside the box, right? So maybe this was actually suggested on social media by somebody. Let the passenger get ejected, into a parachute, and then maybe he can even take a selfie of the crash, right? So nobody gets hurt in this case. And I think that's good. It's good to think about outside the box. But I think you should also consider how realistic the dilemma is. So the dilemma looks unreal, but think of this kind of very simple scenario. So you have two programmers, and they're discussing what should the car do here. We're programming the car. There's an autonomous vehicle. There is no accident, right? Like nothing is going to happen. But should I program the car to be a little bit, there's a big truck here. Should I get a little bit far from it? Or should I say, oh, there's a cyclist. I should get a little far. So you could imagine a programmer saying, oh, let's move away from the truck to reduce the risk of collision. I don't like cyclists, right? So now the programmer is making an ethical decision because even though this is not a dilemma in the immediate sense, if you program 1 million cars in the same way, the accident statistics will look different, right? So maybe on average, you will hit more cyclists. So one way or another, we will face this dilemma, even if the situation of 1 versus 5 is unrealistic and kind of very, very unlikely. This is a very likely scenario. Now, what we've done is we built this website called The Moral Machine, which you can play upstairs, or actually just outside here, to explore these kinds of dilemmas. So this was launched in 2016, and it presents people with randomly generated dilemmas that look like this. So they have an autonomous car that has one person, is going to kill 3 people and a dog. These people are crossing illegally. The car can swerve and kill the one person in the car. What should the car do? And every time you go, there are 13 different scenarios, and they're all randomly generated, so they look different, right? There's 26 million possible dilemmas, right? Because we vary all kinds of things. Sometimes it's a business person, it's a doctor. Sometimes this light is green, so they haven't done anything wrong, and so on. So what should the car do? We were very fortunate that this website became viral because of a variety of, so it got covered throughout the popular media, the traditional media. It got covered by all these crazy YouTubers who have millions of followers, and they do reaction videos, and they have, and that led to millions and millions of views. So we got data from all over the world in 10 different languages about how people would solve these kind of dilemmas. And even though, despite the cartoon, we published it in a serious journal in collaboration with anthropologists and psychologists and economists to analyze the results and the cross-cultural differences between them. And let me show you some of the results in cartoons as well. So the first result is human life first. So humans were always prioritized over, or very strongly prioritized over animals. But cats were less prioritized than dogs. So if you are a cat, you have to be worried and you have to say, we don't have enough cute cat videos online, right? We need to improve our image. The second result is that people had very strongly is saving more lives, but also saving young lives. So if a car faces a bus full of children, then the car has to throw itself under the bus, so to speak, right? To save the kids. Also, there was a strong preference to prioritize people who did nothing wrong. So this car is getting in trouble, is being questioned. Yes, I did swerve to avoid the nice old lady and ended up killing 2 old ladies, but they were jaywalking, right? So they're not the same, right? Now, let me show you what the results look like. So this is what all the different factors that we studied. And you can see here that sparing humans was the strongest thing over animals, sparing more, sparing younger people, but also sparing higher status, right? This is something to be concerned about. People want cars to run over homeless people more than business people, for example. So we shouldn't vote on how to program cars, right? And so on. Also, there's a preference for sparing women, although that was weaker than these other major preferences. And I just want to show you a couple of countries to see how people vary across cultures. So this is Germany. So the Germans are less likely to act, like they're just more likely to let the car go. And you could say this could be laziness, it could be because they're Kantian, they don't want to act. Your interpretation. They have a stronger preference for humans, lower preference for higher status, which is, makes sense. I think it's a fairly egalitarian society. And the rest is about average. Now let me show you what China looks like. Right? So very different shape, right? You see how much weaker the preference to save pedestrians. They still prefer to save pedestrians, just not to the same extent. And they're even they care even more than Germans about obeying the law. Which is, again, like, for me, it was counterintuitive at least. And the preference for sparing the young people was weaker. Another way of putting it, older people have higher value in the East. So you build an autonomous car in the East, in the West, in Germany or in the US, and then you export it to India or the Middle East, and then those self-driving tuk-tuks are telling each other, those Western driverless cars have no respect for the elderly, right? So there's a tension, and this is not just autonomous cars, but it could be any other AI system, right? It creates a tension between the preferences of, between the different values of different cultures, right? But also it raises a question, should we program AI systems with different ethics? So if a car, for example, is crossing from Italy to Switzerland, should it become more law-abiding, right? I'm just asking questions, right? I don't have answers. Okay. And then the other the other problem that compounds this is what we call the social dilemmas. So let me explain the social dilemma, which actually we published this before the Moral Machine paper. So we asked people, what do you think the car should do? Save more lives or do nothing? And especially what we told them is, suppose the car has to sacrifice the person in the car to save the pedestrians, okay, like hit the wall. And then people said, yeah, driverless cars should sacrifice the passengers, except my car, of course, right? And this was the result. So this result showed that the market is not going to solve this problem because consumers want protection. I mean, rightly so. And this is not a new thing. Now, nowadays, in the US, you could get this thing on your car, like a bull bar. And the bull bar will protect you. Or if you get, here in Germany, you can get an SUV, right? A bigger car, and the bigger car will give you more protection. It's physics, right? But it will also hurt the other car more, or hurt the passengers more. So the difference here, and of course, by the way, these things are banned in Europe and in Australia, but not in the US. So they made a different decision about with trade-offs, right? But the difference is that the AI that puts the passenger first is not visible, right? It's not a visible feature of the car. It's the brain of the car that's making these decisions and causing this transfer of risk from the passenger to the pedestrians, potentially. And therefore, if we're not looking inside the brain, or if we're not looking at the behavior of the car, we wouldn't know. Whereas with this, we know, right? This is easier to see. It's a shiny object, right? Okay. But the problem is we said, okay, well, this problem was solved with regulation, right? So in the EU, you can't do this. You can't install bull bars. In Australia, you can't do this, and then the farmers are saying, you know, we need it for protection from kangaroos, for example, when we hit them, right? So you can solve this problem with regulation, but we told American sample, okay, what if we did regulation? Like we require the cars to be pro-social. People said, well, then I don't want the car, right? So it's like, you know, what do you mean the car drives under the speed limit? You know, I want like a, you know, I'm a petrol head, right? People want, so what happens is then people will not buy the car. They will continue to drive their own cars, and if the autonomous cars are safer, then this is actually worse, right? Worse for society. So this is kind of an interesting dilemma that if you don't allow people self-protection, to self-prioritization, you may delay the introduction of the technology itself, which may be safer. Policymakers, good luck, right? Figure this out. Okay, so what do we need? How do we solve these problems? I just want to give you a quick suggestion. We need politics, basically. It's no longer a question of ethics, it's a question of politics. We need a social contract or an algorithmic social contract. So typically we say we need a human in the loop. You know, we need a human to supervise the machine, right? But here we want different things. So imagine there's an AI president, and then people are saying, we want AI fairness, we want AI efficiency. This looks like an economist, right? And then we want AI safety. So people want different things. And of course, you can't have what you want, right? I want infinite battery. Talk to me when you've negotiated the trade-offs. So we humans need to negotiate the values first, then ensure, ask the machines to follow those values. And that's a human problem. It's not a computer science problem. So what we need is society in the loop. The society has to resolve this, through a social contract. It has to resolve these differences before the human can even supervise the machine. Okay? And very nicely, there was actually some work by some people at Harvard University building on a political philosopher, the work of political philosopher John Rawls, which looks into this question. So John Rawls came up with the idea of the veil of ignorance. So his idea of justice was that people imagine themselves behind a veil of ignorance. So they don't know who they're going to be, right? So you become from this original position, what he calls the original position, and you don't know if you're going to be an old person or a young person, a male or a female. You don't know if you're going to be a passenger or a pedestrian. And then you choose which society you want to live in without knowing who you are. And the society that people will choose, that's the just society, because people will say, I want to avoid the worst case scenario. There's some issues with this philosophical idea, but it's powerful. I think it's suitable for autonomous vehicles. So I tried to explain it in a cartoon where John Rawls is running a game show, right? So in the game show, he's the game master, and he's presented this dilemma. There's a car about to kill 3 people or hit the tree and kill the passenger. So John Rawls says, once you've decided what the car should do, the wheel of fortune will decide who you are, which person you will be, right? So first you give me the rule. You don't know if you're going to be this person, this person, this person, or this person. And then I tell you which person you will be. So now we turn the wheel of fortune, and you're more likely to be a pedestrian in this situation, right? So the contestant says, if the car sacrifices the passenger, I have a 3 in 4 chance of surviving, right? So let's program the car this way. And in fact, that's what the study showed. So the study by George Green and others showed that if you prime people with this veil of ignorance idea, they're more likely to accept a car that will sacrifice the passenger in this case. So there is a way to resolve these kind of differences by allowing people to not just think of themselves as passengers, to say, sometimes you're crossing the street too, okay? So in short, in summary, AI can cause problems but it can also be a moral superpower. You know, so while this person is thinking, maybe the machines can actually figure things out, right? And especially the case with something like an autonomous crash, right? A human will just do something random, but now the car can pause and make a considered decision about the situation at like a microsecond scale, right? So let's use this superpower to create a more human society rather than be all afraid and shut down the machines, right? Because I think that would be the mistake. And again, finally, thank you. And if you are interested in the cartoons, please visit the website.
So, thanks, Iyad. So, are there any questions? We do have time for some questions. No? Okay.
Yeah, I was curious first of all, thank you for an amazing lecture. This was really engaging and fun and informative, obviously. I was just curious about your personal opinion of like the development of general AI and it's becoming an actual threat to humanity. Like your personal opinion, though. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a really hard question, and I would just have to make something up because nobody knows. You know, honestly, it's like, and the problem is because we don't really know, we don't understand human consciousness. So, you know, there was this, it was all over the news. Some engineer from Google said that one of the chatbots is sentient. But the thing is, we don't even know how to, you know, why a human is sentient. Like, how do we know that a human is sentient or not? So it's a fundamental philosophical and kind of scientific question. And so the answer is I don't know, but I do think that AI is making extremely fast progress in a variety of domains, very surprising to people even working in AI, like it's not hitting the wall yet. Now, whether this will lead to a general kind of intelligence is really, part of me thinks it's not a crazy idea. Like, it's not so unlikely that, you know, we should be comfortable for 50 years. I think there is a non-negligible chance of it happening in our lifetime. Let's just say that, right? From what I'm seeing, because it's just a matter of, you know, combining things. You know, of course, now the chatbots are not, they know so much about language, but they don't know, you know, how to walk, right? But then there are robots that know how to walk. And how easy is it to integrate all of this? I don't know. But sometimes it may be easier than we thought, or it could be harder. So, but I wouldn't just completely sleep at the wheel, right? Yeah. Thank you.
So, thank you, Iyad.
Thank you.
So I might have missed my intro, but I won't miss the outro. So the English program continues at 9 with the library. And the meeting point is in front of the cafeteria if you are interested. In that here, we will continue with the next presentation at 9 in this room. So we hope you enjoy the whole evening, and thanks.